Hi guys and welcome back. This is our first coding interview video, and in this video we're going to talk about FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz is a very common question that gets asked in programming interviews, and it's basically to recreate a simple game that children play in code format. The game goes as follows. You get a bunch of people in a circle, and you start at one person and they start counting at the number 1. Then the next person in the circle counts for number 2, then 3, 4, 5, and so on. But if the number that you have to say is divisible by 3, you instead say Fizz. And if it's divisible by 5, you say Buzz. And if it's divisible by both 3 and 5, you say FizzBuzz. So very simple. It's just meant to be played really quickly so that you have to do the mental maths in your head very quickly. A common request is to print out the first 100 numbers or iterations of FizzBuzz. So you're going to start counting at 1, you're going to get up to the number 100, and you're going to print out 1, 2, Fizz, 4, Buzz, and so on as you go through. So let's start with for I in range 1 to 101, which is going to be our loop. And I'm going to write pass in here just for the time being. And that just means in Python, don't do anything in this loop for each number. If we wanted to print the numbers from 1 to 100, we could just do print I. And now if we run this, you get the numbers from 1 to 100. So that's good. But now we have to replace the number 3, 6, 9, and so on by Fizz, and the numbers 5, 10, and so on by Buzz, and also check whether any number is divisible by both 3 and 5 so that you can print FizzBuzz. So there's a few ways that you could do this. So the most common way to check whether a number is divisible by another is to use the modular operator. What that does is you can do result is I modulus 3. So what this is going to do is it's going to divide I by 3, and it's going to give you the remainder of the division. So if I was 2, then you would get 0 remainder 2. So the result would be 2. However, if I is 3, then the result of dividing is 1 and there is no remainder, so result would be 0. That means that if the result is 0, I is a number that is divisible by 3. So here you can print Fizz. And if it's not, then you can print I. So if we save and run this, then you'll see that now every number that is divisible by 3 gets Fizz, and every other number gets the number itself. So this is potentially a way to get started. But of course, you do have a problem, which is that at the moment, the 5s are not being replaced by Buzz. So we can do elif I divided by 5 is 0, then we're going to print Buzz. And at this point, I'll just say that you can do this in line inside the if statement. You don't have to create a variable for it. So I'm just going to move this one down here as well. So now, if the result of dividing by 3 is a remainder of 0, you're going to print Fizz. If it's by 5, you're going to print Buzz, and otherwise you're going to print the number. So let's press play again. And now you'll see that these numbers here, 1, 2, Fizz, 4, Buzz, Fizz because it will be 6, and so on. However, as you get to number 15, which is the first number that is divisible by both 3 and 5, you should print out FizzBuzz, but here we're printing Fizz. That is because this if statement gets checked first. It prints out Fizz because 15 is divisible by 3. And then none of these get checked because that's how if statements work in Python. If you have them in a chain of if, elif, else, only one of them will ever execute. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we check for 3 and 5 first, so we can print FizzBuzz. Then we check for 3, and then we check for 5. So I'm going to do that up here. If I divided by 3 is 0, and modulus 5 is 0, then we're going to print FizzBuzz. And if that didn't happen, we're going to check whether it's divisible by 3, then we'll check whether it's divisible by 5, and then we'll print the number if it's none of those. So again, we're going to press play, and now you'll see that you get 1, 2, Fizz, 4, Buzz, Fizz, and so on, and as you get to 15, that's your first FizzBuzz printed out. Some common mistakes that I see my students do is to not make these into a chained if statement. So they sometimes do something like this. So this sort of seems to make sense. If the number is divisible by 3 and 5, you print FizzBuzz. And then in a different chain of if statements, if the number is divisible by 3, you print Fizz. If the number is divisible by 5, you print Buzz. And if it's neither of them, you print the number itself. However, if you run this, you'll see that the output is not actually what you want. For example, the number 15 here has FizzBuzz, Fizz, and Buzz printed out. That's because all of these if statements executed because they're not in a chain. And a chain requires the elif in order to be part of the same if chain. Now all of these statements here are running. If you want them to not run, do put it into elif. This here is okay, even if it's a different if statement, because the way that these logical comparisons work means that this one and one of these won't run ever. However, it's just better to do else, saves you from a bit of typing there, and it's a bit more effective. Another common mistake that I see my students make is that the order of these if statements is incorrect. Often I see checking for 3 first, then 5, and then 3 and 5. So something like this. There's a big problem with this, which is that, as I mentioned earlier, only one of these if statements is going to run, and that statement that is going to run is the first one that matches or that evaluates to true. So for 15, it is divisible by 3, so you would print Fizz, and I'll show you just by running this file. Here's the number 15, and you can see that Fizz was printed out and not FizzBuzz. That's because 15 is divisible by 3, so you print this and you ignore the rest. You do want the more specific checks to go first, so that if they don't run, you can move on to the less specific ones. Just like that. There's many other ways to implement FizzBuzz in Python, including using string concatenation. There's like ternary operators you can do, and a whole bunch of other things. And those are all linked in our blog post down in the description below, so feel free to check it out and give it a read if you want to see some more alternative solutions. But this is how you do FizzBuzz in Python. Hope you've learned something, and hope you can make use of it in your next coding interview. I'll see you next time.